everybody, back to another edition of In the Know. I am your host, Tony Reeves, and let's get rocking and rolling. I want to talk to you today about a situation that you may not even realize, and this is what I call how being a boss changes how you view things. Now, you're going to say, well, what do you mean by how I view things? Well, effectively, once you've had the opportunity to run your own business and be in charge of your own personal affairs with regards to running your own business and everything that comes with it, once you are no longer in a boss position, no longer running a business, and you either, one, go back into the workforce, or if you just stop it, just more importantly, you go back into the workforce working for somebody else. Let me tell you, whether you believe it or not, you are going to see being an employee or even working in a new environment totally different. Now, some of you will be like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense. If you've had the opportunity to be an employee, because most of us are conditioned to be employees, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, you're used to going someplace where somebody basically takes care of all your affairs. They take care of all your personal effects. They take care of all your insurances and workers' comp, long-term disability, all the trappings that comes with being an employee. And you just have an expectation to perform a certain set of job responsibilities going forward, and that's it. But the moment you step out and you decide to run your own business, even if it's for a short period of time of like a year or two or longer, you are changed for the rest of your life. And if you decide to go back into a working environment as an employee of a company, your viewpoint and how you see it is going to be different. And you're going to say to yourself, well, what do you mean by that? Well, here's a couple of things that you need to understand. You being a boss makes you view the world much differently because, one, being a boss, you understand what it means to be the decision maker. Think about it. When you actually have the opportunity to work for someone, your ability to make decisions about certain things may be limited, meaning you may have guidance in terms of certain things that you should do and so forth, but you're the decision maker with regards to decisions for certain things may be governed by a set of protocols. It may be governed by certain policies. It may be governed by having to go to a supervisor. And the reality is that others may have a greater degree of input in what decisions that need to be made regarding a topic that you don't have. But guess what? When you run your own thing, you're the decision maker. That means everything starts and stops with you. And so when you initially make a decision, it may be limited and say, oh, okay, I'll do this. But then what ends up happening is everything you do flows through your business. So when you decide to, get a new website, how it looks, how it reflects, how it addresses or presents itself so that it reflects your company, those are so many micro decisions you have to make because you have to think about how can this be utilized by my customers? How can I use this to generate business? How can I use this so people can engage my product in order to make money? All of a sudden you realize, wow, when I'm an employee, all these micro decisions I didn't have to make. Now you understand how the decision-making process works. So when you go back into a work environment, you may appreciate not having to make as many decisions, but at the same time, you understand what that means. The other part of this is that you also understand all of the moving parts. When you go in and you work, a lot of times what happens, you only focus on one thing, what your responsibility is. And that's fine. That's fine. But when you go out on your own, you're the boss, you're the employee, you're HR, human resources, your marketing, your bookkeeping, you're all of these different components that have to work in order to help you generate funds to make sure you keep your doors open. When you're an employee, you don't sometimes either think about or in some instances even care about all the moving parts. All you care about is, what am I supposed to do? Give me my check. Nothing wrong with that. But just keep in the back of your mind that when you have the opportunity to work as a boss and run your own business, you understand how all those things interplay and you understand the importance of how they interplay with each other in order for you to do what you need to do. Another thing that you realize is that because of that, you see the world very differently. Just as I said before, when you're running your own business, you have all these different hats you have to wear. So when you go back into the workforce and you start working for other people, you start kind of looking at how they do things very differently, because no longer are you going in with this blinder of thinking of oh, this is only my job. You start thinking about how what you do impacts others. And not only do you think about how what you do impacts others, you think about how others impact what you do. So what ends up happening is that you get a more global perspective of what it means going in. So this way, you're not merely sitting in here trying to be, king of your own little castle. You're wondering how everybody else's kingdom affects yours, and you keep those things in mind. Another point that you should be aware of as well, when you're an employee, you adapt to a situation. When you're an employer, you pivot to a situation, and you're thinking, what the hell does that even mean? Well, listen to me as I break this down. When you are an employer, you have to pay attention to trends. You have to pay attention to when seasons are peak, when seasons are down, and you have to pivot accordingly. So guess what? If by some chance, let's say that you have a food truck that serves a certain type of food. If you're in an area like a cold weather state, like in the Northeast, where what you find is that in the cold weather months, your business goes down, but in the warm weather months, it goes up. Well, guess what? You need to pivot to make sure you make as much money as possible during those warm weather months, so that when the cold weather months come on, you can pivot to make sure that you're still generating money, but you know that you're going to make that money up during the other portion. Why am I using the word pivot? Well, the reason why I say pivot is because when you're pivoted, because you're feeling the impact of those changes. When you're working for somebody, guess what? You're going to get the same paycheck regardless of what you do, unless you're in a bonus type of system or commission base. Under most instances, your salary does not change, regardless of how well things do, up or down. Now, if you get a bonus structure, that's great. But again, in most instances, if you're in a situation where you're just getting a straight salary, it don't matter if it's a slowdown in the Christmas season. It doesn't matter if it's a slowdown in the cold weather months, because you're going to still get paid the same. But when you're an employer, you have to pay attention to those trends, because if you know you need money to take care of your bills, if you need money to take care of paying your employees, if you need money just to keep your business afloat, you're going to want to know what parts of the year you're making the most amount of money and what parts of the year are you experiencing a slowdown. So you learn very early on how to pivot so that this way you can account for those periods of time. And then finally, here's the biggest one I want you to realize. You realize that trickle down is a choice. Now, somebody like, what the hell are you talking about trickle down? If you get a chance, go down and Google trickle down economy. Trickle down economics. It's this notion, effectively, that, and I'm paraphrasing very badly here, but it basically operates that the less stress and pressure you put on the corporate entity in terms of taxes and regulations, the idea is the extra money that they are able to save from having to not be exposed to those things, they can trickle that down to paying more to their employees and reducing the cost on their customers. Yeah, that's a choice, because the reality is that trickle down is not something that can be mandated. They can't tell you, oh, with the money that you're saving, you've got to give it to your employees. With the money you're saving, you've got to make a discount to the customers. No. So guess what? Think of it like this. Let's say that you had $100 that you were making, but out of every $100, they taxed you and you had to pay $30 in tax. Well, that's $70 that you have to basically have left. Well, what if they reduce it? Now instead of $30, it's $20. Now you have an extra $10. What are you going to do with that extra 10? Are you going to give it to your employees? Are you going to reduce the cost of your services and products because you now have $10 less? Probably not. You're probably going to take that money and either reinvest it back in the company, which is ideally the more prudent thing to do, or you're going to take that money and say that's an extra profit that the company can benefit from, or rainy day fund, so that if things go slow, you've got that money set aside. So there's no guarantee that you're going to put that money in and say, oh, that's an extra $10 bonus I'll give to my top selling person over here, or I'm going to reduce the cost over here for this dollar amount. It truly, at the end of the day, is a choice of what you want to do with that money. But guess what? Why I say that it's a choice? Because if you're in a position where you're running your own company and you are constantly trying to maneuver the funds accordingly, if you see a break there, you might say this is a financial benefit that I can take advantage of that I didn't have before, and I can make this thing do what it do. People, I cannot communicate this enough. The whole notion of being in a business as being a business owner is a great concept, but I want you to understand that the moment you decide to run your own business, you are going to change, because how you see things and how you see the world is going to change you almost overnight, because you will be put in position to do things that you had never done before. You'll be having to run things, make decisions, wear a lot of different hats, and you understand everything from a more global perspective than what it was when you were just a regular rank and file employee. Not saying that's a bad thing, but when you find yourself running your own business and then deciding to go back into the workforce, always remember, you're no longer a rank and file employee. You're someone who has had business experience, and that experience is going to make people see you differently, and you're going to see yourself differently. As always, thanks for tuning in to another edition. This is Tony Reeves, and as always, I ask you, are you ready for the Anthony Reeves experience?